Her true story from Pennsylvania, they said, "You eat, but don't help." So I quietly moved out and sold the house they were living in. The next day, I got 43 missed calls and 7 voicemails. They said, "You eat, but don't help." Like I hadn't scrubbed their toilets with swollen hands. Like I hadn't folded their laundry with fingers that used to play Chopin. Like I was just a mouth to feed. I didn't answer. I just reached for the empty plates like I always did and carried them to the sink. It was Samantha, of course, my daughter-in-law with her clean gym sneakers and permanent frown, who said it. Jason didn't say a word. Not then, not even later. My own son. He kept chewing his overcooked peas and watching his phone screen while his wife shredded me like a junk receipt. My grandson, bless him, just blinked. He's only 7. Too young to understand the language of contempt, but not too young to feel it. I stood at that sink in their spotless open-concept kitchen and let the warm water run over the plate. My hands ached. My heart didn't. Not anymore. Something else had taken its place. Not anger, not grief. A kind of stillness. The kind that happens right before a storm, or right before a decision that ends a chapter for good. Samantha scraped her chair back and stood. "You could at least offer to cook once in a while," she added, like I hadn't made breakfast that very morning. Toast with that imported jam she liked. Like I hadn't vacuumed while she was out getting her lashes filled. Like I hadn't, for the 3rd time this week, picked up her son's dirty socks from the hallway because no one else ever did. I didn't speak. What was there to say? That my knees made stairs feel like Everest? That arthritis made gripping a broom feel like pinching fire? That I had spent 40 years holding this family together with coupons, casseroles, and prayer? No. I just wiped my hands on the same tea towel I used to dry Jason's hair when he was small. Then I walked back to my room, or rather, the storage space they'd cleared out for me, and sat on the twin bed with the 2-flat pillow. That night, they laughed in the living room. Samantha's high, sharp laugh and Jason's low murmur. Something about a show. Something about finally having boundaries. My grandson was already asleep. I listened to their comfort, their certainty, and I thought about the one thing they had forgotten, the deed. Back in 1990, before Jason had a mortgage or a wife, my husband and I had bought a house on Maple Street. We raised him there. He took his first steps in that house, lost his first tooth, got his first job mowing lawns for Mr. Carmichael next door. And when he got married and asked to borrow the house until they got on their feet, I said yes. I moved into a smaller place, paid rent, paid bills. Let them settle into our house, because that's what mothers do. But I never changed the name on the deed, never transferred the title, never signed it over, because I knew, somehow, deep down, that someday I might need a way out. Not revenge, just a door, a handle, something I could reach for when everything else was taken. That night, after their laughter faded and their bedroom door clicked shut, I opened the box at the bottom of my closet. Inside, a leather wallet, a marriage certificate, and the folded, notarized deed to the house they lived in. My house. Still mine. Every inch. I laid it on my lap like an old photograph and let my fingers trace the edges. My name. My husband's signature. The date. That was the night I made the first call. To James Callahan, my husband's best friend. Still practicing law. Still loyal. Still sharp as ever. "James," I said softly, "I think I'm ready." He didn't ask what I meant. He just said, "Come in Tuesday. Bring everything." So I did. And the next part? Well, you'll hear it soon. Because silence is not weakness. It's memory sharpening its blade. And if you've ever been called a burden, if you've ever been told you eat but don't help, If you've ever swallowed your pride just to keep the peace, then this story is yours too. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from anger. Not even from hurt. That part of me had quieted long ago, like a wind-up toy that finally ran out of clicks. I lay on the narrow mattress with the thrift store sheet tucked too tight under my feet and stared up at the ceiling fan, counting each click of the motor like rosary beads. Outside the thin door, I could hear the hum of their dishwasher, the soft pings of clean knives and plates settling into place. The same knives I washed last week, the same plates I dried. Their voices had gone quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't peace, just absence. The kind that settles after something sour has been said, and no one dares stir it. In the dark, I thought of Harold, my husband of 46 years, the man who once built me a garden bed with his bare hands and a borrowed shovel, who called me Ruthie even when I snapped at him, who wrote me notes on paper napkins and stuck them in the bread box just to make me laugh. He'd been gone 10 years. Cancer doesn't care about kindness. It took him slow and cruel, and I nursed him through every hour of it, bathing him, feeding him, holding his hand when he couldn't find his own name. When he passed, it felt like someone had pulled the center pole from a tent. Everything sagged, but I stayed standing. That's what we do. And Jason. Jason was always a good boy. Quiet, sweet. The kind who cried when he broke a crayon or when the bird feeder ran empty. I remember sitting on the porch swing, holding him against my chest while he sobbed over a dead rabbit in the road. "Why do things stop being loved when they're not new anymore?" he asked me, and I didn't know how to answer. I wonder now if that question ever stopped mattering to him, because somewhere between that tender boy and this grown man, staring at his phone while his wife scolded his mother like a freeloader, something broke. Maybe it was marriage. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe he just forgot. But I didn't. I remembered everything. The nights I stayed up sewing his Halloween costumes. The mornings I skipped breakfast so he could have lunch money. The times I lied to creditors just to keep the lights on while he finished school. And now, here I was, a mouth to feed, a guest in my own legacy. That's when the grief changed shape. It stopped being a weight and started being a key. The next morning, I made coffee like I always did. Samantha came downstairs in her yoga pants and didn't meet my eyes. Jason followed, kissed her cheek, poured himself cereal. Not a word, not a nod. Not even a thank you for the hot pot on the stove. I folded the throw blanket on the couch, picked up the toys from under the table, wiped crumbs from the countertop. Invisible. It's a strange thing, feeling ghosted by people who still share your oxygen. That afternoon, I packed a bag. Just a small one. Documents, wallet, my rosary, a photo of Harold, smiling on our 40th anniversary in front of the old fireplace, the one they'd painted over, and the deed, still crisp and folded, with its embossed seal and date, June 7th, 1990. Then I called James again. "Tomorrow," I said. "I'll be there first thing." He didn't say a word, just gave a quiet exhale. "I'll be waiting." I left the house just after dawn. Jason and Samantha were still asleep. I didn't leave a note, just my key, resting on the kitchen counter beside a folded dish towel I'd washed the night before. The bus ride across town was slow. My knees ached. My bag felt heavier than it was. But inside me, something lifted, like a storm that had moved on without making a mess. James's office hadn't changed. Same dusty blinds, same potted plant struggling in the corner. He opened the door himself, looked older, thinner, but familiar. We didn't hug. We're not the hugging type. But he made me tea. 2 sugars, no milk. "I always remember the quiet ones," he said. I smiled. Good, because I'm about to be loud. And I handed him the deed. James adjusted his glasses, the same wire frames he wore back when Harold was still around, and opened the folder like it was scripture. He ran his finger down the page slowly, then again more carefully, as if confirming something he already knew. Still in your name, he said. Hasn't been transferred, taxes paid, mortgage long gone. It's clean. I nodded, but didn't speak. My throat had gone dry, not from fear, from something older, from holding my breath too many years, perhaps. You want to transfer it to them? He asked, without looking up. I let the silence stretch. No, I said finally. I want to sell it. He stopped mid-reach for his pen and looked at me. Are you sure? I was sure the moment she said I eat but don't help. He leaned back, hands folded. I knew that look. He wasn't trying to talk me out of it, just trying to understand what version of Ruth had walked into his office that morning. There's no legal issue, he said. You're the sole owner. You don't even need their consent to list it. I'm not telling them until it's done. He nodded. No judgment, just acceptance. You'll need a realtor. I know someone honest. I already picked mine. He smiled faintly. Of course you did. I handed him Jessica Tran's card, a young woman I'd known since she was a little girl, with scraped knees and a stack of library books taller than her backpack. Her mother worked in circulation with me for 15 years. Jessica grew up respectful, smart, kind. She was the one I trusted. James glanced at the card. She's good. She's decent, I said. I'm not asking for miracles, just decency. We went over paperwork. Signing felt like sewing, quiet, rhythmic, final. Every line was a stitch in something new, something mine. You want to wait for a certain offer? James asked. No open houses, I said. No showings with my name on the mailbox. I don't want drama. I'll note that. And I want the money wired. No checks, no delays. Understood. We finished in under an hour. When I stepped out of his office, the city felt different, like I was walking taller, even if my bones still ached. I called Jessica on the corner by the post office. I'm ready, I said. She paused. Do you want to come by the office or… No, I said. I want you to meet me at the house. The house? Funny how I still called it that, even after all the cold stares and whispered jabs, even after the way Samantha talked to me like I was a pile of unpaid bills, even after Jason's silence, because that house still had Harold's fingerprints on the banister. It still had the tree we planted for our 25th anniversary. It still had the echoes of bedtime stories and burnt toast on school mornings. It was mine. Not just on paper, in memory, in effort, in love. Jessica met me just before sunset. I didn't go inside. I waited in the car across the street, watching her walk the perimeter with her clipboard and camera. She worked quickly, respectfully, didn't peek in the windows, didn't ask why I wasn't joining her. When she came back to the car, she had the papers ready. You'll get multiple offers, she said. Market's hot, but I'll screen them like we discussed. I nodded. She handed me the pen. The signature came easy. My name flowed like it had been waiting years for this moment. When I handed the clipboard back, she smiled. You okay? I looked at the house once more. The porch Jason never fixed. The shutters Samantha painted beige. The flower bed where my tulips used to be. I'm finally getting out of the guest room, I said. Jessica's smile widened, but she didn't say a word. She just walked back to her car and left. That night, I checked into a motel. Clean, quiet. The kind of place where no one asks why an old woman pays in cash. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the tea I'd brewed in a paper cup. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for someone to thank me. I was waiting for the offers. The listing went live the next morning at 9:12 a.m. Jessica texted me a screenshot. 3 sharp photos, 1 paragraph of copy, no fluff. It said, "Charming 3-bedroom in central Pennsylvania. Owned by same family since 1990. Mature trees, updated utilities, clean title. Viewings by appointment only." There was no mention of Jason, no mention of Samantha, no trace of them at all. By noon, Jessica had already fielded 6 inquiries. One was a woman relocating from Maryland after a divorce. One was a retired couple who wanted to downsize. One was a man with an earnest voice who said, "I'm just looking for a place where my daughter can ride her bike." And by 3 o'clock, there were 4 offers, all over asking, all in cash. Jessica sent them to me in a tidy file, color-coded and labeled. I read each one carefully, not because I doubted the money, but because I wanted to feel who these people were. I wanted the house to go to someone who didn't think warmth was clutter. Someone who would notice the sun hitting the back porch at just the right hour for a good cup of tea. That's when I saw her. Offer number 3, Lillian Green, 52, widow, former nurse, looking for a fresh start. Her letter said, "I want a home, not just a house. I want to plant something and watch it grow." She didn't offer the most, but she offered something else. She reminded me of me. I called Jessica and said, "That one." Jessica didn't question it. She just replied, "We'll move fast. You'll have the closing documents by morning." And I did. By 8:46 a.m., I had signed the papers in the motel lobby, using a pen with the bank's logo on it and hands that didn't shake once. I signed as Ruth Evelyn Thomas, sole owner and seller. The sound of the pen on paper was soft, but inside me it thundered. By 11:30 a.m., the wire hit my account. By 2 p.m., Lillian had received her keys from Jessica personally, and by 4 p.m., Jason still didn't know. The house was sold. Legally. Irrevocably. He was still at work. Samantha was likely still scrolling Pinterest in the kitchen, sipping the oat milk lattes I used to make for her. I didn't call. I didn't warn them. I didn't leave a note. But I did leave something. At 5 p.m., a courier knocked on their front door and handed Samantha a certified envelope. Inside, the official transfer of ownership. Signed. Notarized. Filed with the county. Effective immediately. And a letter, not from Mom, not from Mother, just from R.E. Thomas, stating that the new owners would allow 7 days to vacate before pursuing legal eviction. I imagined her reading it in that spotless kitchen. I imagined Jason walking through the door, tossing his keys in the bowl by the fridge, and hearing the words, "She sold the house." I imagined the stillness that followed, the disbelief, the first cold knot of panic curling in his stomach. They wouldn't understand it right away. Not fully. They'd think it was a mistake, a trick. They'd call Jessica. They'd demand an explanation. And Jessica, calm, efficient Jessica, would say, "All documentation is verified and filed. Mrs. Thomas was the sole legal owner. The sale is complete. This conversation is over." And that would be that. At 6:13 p.m., my phone buzzed. Lauren, 3 missed calls, no voicemail, then 4 more, then a text. "Is this real? What are you doing?" Then another. "You can't sell this house. We live here." Then a final one, short and shaking. "Please call me. This isn't funny." I didn't reply. I placed the phone screen down on the nightstand and sat back in the stiff motel chair. Outside, the sky had turned the color of bruised plum. The street light flickered. Somewhere in the next room, a baby cried. A couple argued about dinner. And I steeped a bag of mint tea in a styrofoam cup and watched the steam curl like a new kind of peace. They were just beginning to realize I wasn't bluffing, but I had known all along. This wasn't revenge. It was memory. Corrected. By 9 that night, my phone had logged 13 missed calls, 11 from Jason, 2 from Samantha. She finally left a voicemail. Her voice, tight and high-pitched, wavered somewhere between disbelief and fury. "You can't do this. You've lost your mind. We have a child. You want your grandson to be homeless? This is elder abuse. Do you even know what you're doing?" I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, because I'd already said everything I needed to, in ink, on paper, through channels they never imagined I still remembered how to use. At 10:43 p.m., Jason called again. This time he left a message. It was quieter, slower. "Mom, can we talk? Please? I didn't know the house was still in your name. Samantha said it was just easier for taxes. I thought you were okay with it. I didn't mean for this to get so bad." He sighed. Then, "I should have said something. That night at dinner, I should have stopped her. I just didn't want to make it worse." I played the message once, then again. He sounded like a boy again, like the same Jason who once brought me dandelions in a crumpled fist and called them sunflowers. But the silence between us now was too wide for flowers. The next morning, Jessica texted me. "They tried to call me again. I didn't answer. I've sent confirmation to the buyers. Lock change is scheduled for next week." Then she added, "You did the right thing." I stared at those words for a long time. Because that's the hardest part, isn't it? Even when you know you've chosen yourself, even when the papers are signed, the key is turned, the damage already done, some small, aching part of you still whispers, "Was that too much?" Especially when it's your child. Especially when it's your only one. That guilt is stitched deep into a mother's bones. But here's the truth no one likes to say out loud. Mothers are allowed to protect themselves too, even from their children, especially from their children. By Thursday, the neighborhood had started to buzz. People slowed their cars when passing the house. A few neighbors stood a little too long by their hedges. One of them, Mrs. Keller, I think, muttered to another, "Is that the daughter getting evicted?" The rumors moved like water, soft but unstoppable. "She sold it out from under them." "No, they kicked her out and she owned it." Imagine being thrown out of your mother's house. I imagined Samantha hearing that one. I imagined her back stiffening, her voice going brittle. But the thing about reputation is, you only own it until someone tells a better story. And mine? Mine had finally begun to speak. By Friday, Jason texted again, just one line. "Can we meet?" I didn't reply. That night, I lit a candle on the motel nightstand, not for prayer, just for quiet. The flickering calmed me. The soft scent, vanilla and something else faintly floral, reminded me of the soaps Harold used to bring back from his conferences. I sat in that light and breathed. It didn't smell like Samantha's detergent. It didn't echo with Jason's silence. It didn't ask me to make space, to lower my voice, to be grateful for a place I paid for. It just existed, like me. That was the night I made the second call. Not to Jason, not to Samantha. To someone else. To someone with a key. Someone who'd helped me once before. I picked up the phone, found the number scrawled in the back of an old address book, and dialed. "Good evening," said a calm, warm voice on the other end. "Hello," I said. "This is Ruth Evelyn Thomas." A pause, then recognition. "Ruth, well, now, it's been years." "I have a little idea," I said softly. He chuckled. You always did. And just like that, a plan began to take shape. A plan not to retaliate, but to rebuild. Not to punish, but to protect. Not to scream, but to remember. Because sometimes silence isn't empty. It's preparation. His name was Leonard Sharp, a retired contractor who once fixed our roof after a summer storm tore half the shingles off. That was 15 years ago. He'd refused to take full payment because Harold helped him bury his father when no one else showed up. That's the kind of man Leonard was, the kind who didn't forget. "I'm not building a mansion," I told him on the phone. "Just something solid, simple, enough space for 4 or 5 people who've been told they're too much." "You buying a place?" "Already sold mine." He didn't ask why, just said, "I know a spot. Small old boarding house on the east side. Been empty 2 years. Needs gutting, but the bones are good." "Like me," I said. He laughed. We met that weekend. The house was squat and slanted, paint peeling like old wallpaper, front steps uneven and soft in the middle. But it had character. 2 bay windows like eyes, a porch with potential, and a garden that hadn't yet given up. I bought it in cash. No mortgage, no paperwork mailed to anyone but me. And then I named it Haven House. Underneath, I carved a single sentence into the doorframe with Leonard's old chisel. "No one here proves they're worth to stay." I didn't move in right away. I wasn't ready to share space again. I stayed at the motel, walked the blocks between it and Haven House every morning, bringing Leonard coffee and sitting on the porch while he and a few retired union men patched the floor, replaced the pipes, painted every wall soft. It took 4 weeks, and every nail felt like a stitch in my own skin, pulling back together. Meanwhile, Jessica updated me on the old house. Lillian had moved in with a pot of lavender and 2 rescue cats. She wrote me a letter I didn't expect, handwritten, 3 pages, thanking me for giving her a place to start again. "I walk barefoot in the kitchen," she wrote, "because I've never felt this safe in my life." I cried in the parking lot of the hardware store when I read it, not from regret, from knowing it had gone to someone who saw floors as more than surfaces, who saw warmth as more than decor. By mid-May, Haven House was ready. 4 rooms, 1 shared kitchen, a living room with mismatched chairs, and a record player that only worked if you balanced a spoon on the corner. I was the first to sleep there. The sheets were mine. The pillows smelled like lavender and age. I sat on the porch that first night with my tea, mint, just how Harold liked it, and watched the light from inside glow through the curtains like a hearth. I wasn't alone. But I wasn't anyone's burden either. Not a guest, not a helper, not invisible. And the next morning, I did something I hadn't done in over a decade. I opened the front door and welcomed someone in. Her name was Alice, 81, witty, sharp as vinegar, and tossed out by her daughter because we need space for the baby who never cried, the daughter who never called again. Alice brought 2 suitcases and a ceramic frog she refused to explain. I gave her the upstairs room with the best light. "No rent," I told her. "Just be." She wept into her pillow the first night. I heard it through the vent. The next week came Clara, 74, no children, no pensions, just a bruised face and a silence that lasted days. Then Myrna, 69, whose son asked her to sign a reverse mortgage and then stopped answering her calls. Then came James. Yes, a man. And yes, I let him stay. Widower, 76. Cooked better than all of us. Told jokes even when no one asked. I gave him the room by the kitchen. He fixed the leaky faucet without me asking. We became a house, not just a roof, a place, not just walls, a truth. People walked past slowly now. Some frowned, some whispered, but some, especially women, looked longer, looked twice, and once someone left a note in the mailbox. "If you ever have space, please call. My mother needs somewhere safe." Haven House wasn't a retirement plan. It was a refusal. A living, breathing, brick and wood refusal to vanish. And I, Ruth Evelyn Thomas, who once was told, "You eat, but don't help," now fed 4 people every Sunday night. Not because I had to, because I could. We had a rule at Haven House: no apologies for being alive. It wasn't on paper. It wasn't posted on the wall. But we all knew it. We breathed it into the floorboards, stirred it into soup, folded it into laundry. If someone said sorry for walking slow, for taking up space, for forgetting a name, someone else always replied, "You don't owe me that." And we meant it. Our dinners were modest, usually soup, bread, something green. James insisted on adding garlic to everything, said it kept the wrong kind of spirits away. Alice called it superstition. Clara didn't speak much, but when she did, her voice sounded like wet leaves on pavement, quiet, certain, full of things she'd never say out loud. We didn't talk about the families we came from, not at first. It was enough to sit together, to pass the salt, to hear someone say good night and mean it. But slowly, the stories came out. Alice told us how her daughter snapped one morning over toast. "You always act like you know better." She'd said nothing in reply, but packed a bag that afternoon. "I realized," she said, "there's no fixing something that doesn't think it's broken." Clara opened up in pieces. She said she used to teach English before they closed her school. Then she cared for her sister through ALS, then her brother through a stroke. When they were gone, her landlord raised the rent, and her cousin said, "Maybe it's time for assisted living." "I'm not a plant," she said to me one night, drinking weak chamomile on the back porch. "I don't need placement." And James told us how his son said, "You're lucky we took you in at all," after he forgot to lock the back door once. One mistake. One forgotten latch. And years of bedtime stories, of paid tuitions, of hand-built swing sets turned to dust. He left the next morning. Didn't even take his fishing rods. We weren't victims, sitting in a circle trading grievances. We were women and men who had been useful until we became inconvenient. And that shift, was the deepest cut of all. Because love that only lasts while you serve a function isn't love. It's a contract. One they expect you to sign in silence. But Haven House didn't ask for signatures, just stories. And slowly, our home filled with them. Myrna planted herbs in an old bathtub out back. Said it reminded her of childhood. Alice found a stack of forgotten records at the thrift store and started Friday night sock dances. James fixed every hinge in the house without being asked. And Clara. She began writing again. Poems, mostly. Quiet, dense ones that made the kitchen go still. I didn't run the house. I just kept it stitched. Fresh sheets, clean tea towels, a kettle that never went cold. And every Sunday I wrote a letter. Not to Jason, not to Samantha, to myself. Just one page. Folded, dated, tucked into the wooden drawer beside my bed. They weren't angry. They weren't bitter. They were full. Full of the kind of quiet that comes when you stop asking to be seen and simply choose to exist as you are. I wrote about the way Clara hummed while kneading dough, about how James laughed when Alice told him he looked like a retired pirate, about the chipped mug that felt like it was made for my hand alone. And once I wrote this. I used to think dignity came from endurance, but maybe it comes from choosing where your story ends. Then I folded the page, slid it into the drawer, and made tea. Because some nights, peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from planting something that grows, even after everything else has died. It was a Tuesday when Jason showed up at Haven House. I recognized the knock before I even stood from my chair. 2 sharp raps, then one softer, the same rhythm he used as a boy when he forgot his keys. I stood at the door for a moment, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to be certain, to feel everything. Then I opened it. He looked older, not in years, in wear. In the slump of his shoulders, the shadows under his eyes, the way his coat hung too loose on a frame that used to be full of forward motion. He held his phone in one hand, like it might save him. "Mom," he said, like the word itself had grown heavy. I didn't speak. He didn't expect me to. "I didn't know it was still in your name," he began. "I thought Samantha handled it." She said. He stopped himself. "Good. I just wanted to keep the peace," he continued, quieter now. "You know how she gets. I didn't mean for it to get like that." "Like what?" I asked. He looked up, surprised I'd spoken. "Like this. Us not talking. You leaving." I let the words settle, let them breathe. Then I stepped aside. "Come in?" I said. He hesitated, stepped over the threshold like it might bite. I led him to the kitchen, small, warm, real. Alice's ceramic frog sat on the windowsill, Clara's herbs in jars on the counter, James's half-finished crossword next to the kettle. He sat at the table, folded his hands like a schoolboy. "This place is nice," he said. I nodded. He looked around again. "It doesn't smell like bleach." I poured tea, set the cup in front of him without asking how he takes it. He never cared for details. He sipped, winced. "Still mint?" I said nothing. He placed the cup down and rubbed his hands together. "She left," he said, almost in a whisper. "Samantha took Caleb. Said I failed her. That I should have stopped you. That I should have fought harder." He looked up at me. "I didn't fight at all, did I?" "No," I said. "I didn't protect you." "No," I said again. His mouth trembled. He wasn't used to being told the truth plainly. Not by me. "I wanted to come earlier, but I didn't know if I'd be welcome." I studied him, the lines around his mouth, the hands that once wrapped around my pinky finger when he was new to this world. "You're always my son," I said, "but that doesn't mean you're welcome everywhere I am." He flinched. I just wanted to say sorry. I nodded once, slowly. Then I stood, walked to the drawer near the stove, and pulled out a sheet of paper. I handed it to him. He read it, confused at first. Then, recognition. It was a ledger, not of money, not exactly, of everything I'd ever paid for without being asked. 96. First apartment deposit. 2003. Caleb's stroller, crib, diapers. 2007. Samantha's dental surgery. 2011. 3 months groceries during Jason's layoff. 2020. Pandemic bills. Over 30 years of quiet giving. A list no one had asked for, but one they'd made necessary. "You kept track?" he asked, eyes wide. "No," I said. I remembered. "There's a difference." He folded the paper slowly, reverently. "I didn't know. You didn't ask." We sat in silence. Then he looked at me, voice softer now. "What do I do?" I thought about it. Then I reached for another page. Blank. I slid it across the table toward him. "You start your own record," I said. "Fill it with things no one asked for, no one expects, but that someone might remember." He held the page like it weighed something, like it might tip him forward or hold him back. "I can't undo what I let happen," he said. "No," I replied, "but you can stop pretending it didn't." He stood, slowly. "Can I come back?" I met his eyes. "To me?" I asked. He nodded. I stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder, not in forgiveness, not in comfort, in farewell. "You can grow, Jason," I said, "but not in my shadow." He didn't argue, didn't beg, just nodded once, turned, and left. The door closed behind him with a quiet that didn't sting, and I sat down with my tea, mint, still warm, across from an empty chair. And I didn't feel alone. I felt free. It was the calm after that conversation that startled me most. Not because it was empty, but because it wasn't. It was full. Full of breath, of stillness, of the kind of quiet that follows truth spoken without apology. I didn't cry. I didn't replay the conversation 100 ways in my head. I just finished my tea, rinsed the cup, and laid it gently on the drying rack beside Alice's blue mug and James's chipped one. By morning, the weather had shifted, not with thunder, but with that soft Pennsylvania grey that makes everything smell like laundry hung too long on the line. I sat by the front window in my shawl and watched the street. The world moved as if nothing monumental had happened, but it had. Later that day, I took the folder with my own copy of the house deed, the one I'd sold out from under the silence, and I slipped it into the bottom drawer of the living room cabinet, beneath spare batteries, a deck of cards missing the King of Hearts, and Clara's crossword books. I didn't need to look at it again, not because it didn't matter, because it had done its work. The next afternoon, Alice was boiling water for pasta when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands and opened it. A woman stood there, well-dressed, maybe mid-40s, pale lipstick, a scarf too elegant for the weather. She cleared her throat. "Are you Mrs. Thomas?" I nodded. "I'm Amanda," she said. "Samantha's sister." "Ah." She shifted her handbag on her shoulder like it was too heavy. "She asked me to come. She's, well, not ready to face you, but she wanted me to ask." "No," I said. Amanda blinked. "You don't know what I was going to say." "Yes, I do." She tilted her head. "You really sold the house." "I really did." She stared at me like I'd spoken in code. "But where will they go?" "Wherever people go when they realize the roof above them was borrowed." "She has a child." "She had a mother," I said. Amanda opened her mouth, then closed it. "She said you tricked them, that you were vindictive." I smiled faintly. "And yet she sent you to ask for help." Silence settled between us like old dust. "She said she didn't mean it," Amanda added too quickly. "That night at dinner? That she was just stressed." "She wasn't just anything," I said. "She was exactly herself." Amanda looked past me, into the hallway, where the light from the kitchen cast long shadows. "This place," she said softly, "doesn't feel angry." "It isn't." "Then what is it?" "Proof," I said, "that peace doesn't need permission." Amanda nodded slowly. "I'll tell her you said no. Tell her I didn't say anything. Tell her I'm just not listening anymore." She hesitated again, then turned, walked back to her car, and drove off without looking back. I closed the door. Clara looked up from the crossword on the coffee table. "Was it trouble?" "No," I said. "Just a memory, knocking." Alice drained the pasta, muttering something about how people never bring their own pots when they come begging. I smiled. I had once raised a man who didn't defend me at dinner. Now I fed 4 strangers who saw me clearly. It wasn't a trade. It was a return. And when I sat down that evening at the small wooden table we all shared, I whispered something to myself. Not a prayer. Not a wish. Just a sentence I needed to say aloud. They called me a burden, and now I build. Then I passed the breadbasket to Clara, and the room filled with the warm clatter of forks and voices and laughter not built on obligation, but on grace. We started planting that weekend. Not because it was spring. It wasn't. It was late October, the kind of cold that stiffens your fingers before you've even tied your apron. But Myrna found 3 bags of tulip bulbs marked down at the garden centre, and she said, "If we don't plant them now, we'll regret it come April." So we did. With stiff knees, gloved hands, and jackets zipped up to our ears, we knelt in the damp soil and made rows, crooked, uneven, imperfect rows. Clara marked each line with a plastic spoon she'd saved from some long-forgotten pudding cup, writing names on the handles: Myrna, Clara, James, Alice, and, in large, shaky letters, Ruth. James said, "I haven't touched a garden since before Carol died. She used to talk to her tomatoes like they were grandchildren." "Better than most grandchildren," Alice muttered, tossing a bulb into the dirt. We laughed. Not because it was cruel, because it was true. Planting tulips in October doesn't make sense to most people. All they see is dirt and cold and hands that ache from digging. But for us, it was a kind of prayer. Not the kind you whisper in pews, the kind you dig into the ground when no one's looking. The kind that says, "I believe spring will come, even if I don't live to see it." Later that night, after the sun had gone down and the kettle had gone quiet, I stood on the back steps with a blanket around my shoulders. The sky was bruised with cloud. The garden looked bare. Just rows of dirt and spoons catching what little moonlight managed to slip through. But I knew better. I knew what was buried. That same evening, Jason called again. I let it ring. The voicemail came a minute later, short, defeated. "I don't know where we're going. Caleb keeps asking for you. Samantha won't speak to me. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." I listened to it once. Then I deleted it. Because I wasn't building a case. I was building a life. The next morning, James made oatmeal and insisted on slicing apples into perfect fans. "You cut like a surgeon," Alice said, eyeing him. He winked. "Only because I've survived 3 wives and learned that food is the only language some people trust." Clara read the obituaries aloud, while buttered toast made the kitchen smell like morning. "Marvin Feldman died," she said. "Left behind 2 children, 3 cats, and a lemon tree." "I hope someone's watering that tree," Myrna said. And I thought, I hope someone remembers him. Not the number of kids, not the headline, the tree. That's what we were doing here. We were being remembered before we were gone. We were seeing each other in the details. I hadn't felt that in years. Not with Jason, not with Samantha. Certainly not in that cramped guest room where the only voice I ever heard was my own, echoing off beige walls and forced gratitude. At Haven House, my slippers were by the door, not because someone told me where to leave them, but because they belonged there. At Haven House, no one sighed when I asked a question. No one rolled their eyes when I couldn't find my reading glasses. No one said, "You eat, but don't help." Because here, we all helped, by existing, by showing up, by telling the truth without demanding applause. That Sunday, we made soup together, lentils and carrots. James added a bay leaf and called it a secret ingredient, though we all saw him do it. Alice set the table with unmatched placemats and a candle that smelled like cinnamon and old paperbacks. When we sat down, no one said grace. We didn't need to. We were already living it. And later that night, as I wrote in my weekly letter to myself, I found my hand, trembling, not from age, from fullness. I wrote, "They thought I left them to be alone, but I left them to find my people." And I did. In dirt and spoons and cinnamon and second-hand chairs. I found them. And I'm not going back. Then I folded the paper, slipped it into the drawer, and turned out the light. The tulips outside slept under the cold soil. And I, for the first time in decades, slept without weight on my chest. 2 weeks later, the mailbox at Haven House held a letter without a return address. The envelope was pale blue, the kind you buy in a rush at a drugstore when you don't know what you're trying to say. I stood at the porch rail a while before opening it. The sun was warm for November, and someone, probably Myrna, had swept the steps without telling anyone. Inside, a single page, typed, polite, distant. Dear Ruth, I don't expect you to read this, but I'm writing anyway. I know I said things I shouldn't have. I know I acted like you were something to manage, not someone to care for. The truth is, I didn't know how to live with you. I didn't know how to live with anyone who saw me clearly. Jason is lost without you. He tries not to show it, but I see it. Caleb asks about you constantly. He still thinks we'll go back to that house. We won't, of course. I know what you did was legal, but it still hurt. That doesn't mean it wasn't fair. I hope you're okay. Samantha. I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it beside the others, not in the drawer with my letters to myself, but in a tin box beneath my bed. That box held things I no longer needed to wear, but wasn't ready to throw away. My old apron, Harold's broken watch, a birthday card from Jason when he was 10 that said, "You're my favorite person, even when you say no." I didn't write back. There was nothing left to say that silence hadn't already taught her. But that evening, I sat on the porch with Alice, and we watched the neighborhood kids ride scooters down the sidewalk, squealing like brakes and freedom. She glanced at me. You okay? I nodded. She leaned back in her chair and sipped her lemonade. Funny, isn't it? She said. How we can carry a whole family on our backs for decades and still be the ones expected to apologize when we finally sit down. I laughed softly. Maybe that's why our backs ache, I said. She raised her glass. To the women who sat down. I clinked mine against hers. To the ones who didn't stand back up. Inside, Clara was making cornbread with too much honey, and James was cursing softly at a loose cupboard hinge. Myrna had put on one of her old records, something bluesy and slow, and the whole house felt like a held breath finally let go. I closed my eyes for a moment, felt the sun on my face, felt the life in the walls. This wasn't a second chance. This was the first real one. That night, I opened my notebook and wrote a new kind of list. Not what I'd given, not what had been taken, just what we'd made here, out of scraps, silence, and soil. One house with soft floors and open chairs. 4 people who remembered how to laugh. 20 tulip bulbs beneath the dirt, waiting. A ceramic frog named Harold. One woman, 78, finally at rest without being dead. I stared at the list, then added one final line. We are not lost. We are not forgotten. We are not done. And then I closed the book and went to bed. Outside, the air was sharp and still. Inside, I was neither. It was early December when I saw her standing across the street from Haven House. She didn't knock, didn't call out. She just stood there, wrapped in a too-thin coat, holding a duffel bag in one hand and a paper cup in the other. Her posture was off. Not stiff, not slouched. Something in between. Like a child who's been scolded and isn't sure where to stand now. I watched from the window a long while. It was Samantha. Her hair was longer than I remembered, pulled back loosely. No makeup, no performance. Just her, shivering a little under a grey sky, like she wasn't sure what to hope for. She didn't come closer. She didn't leave. Just waited. I opened the door after 10 minutes, stepped onto the porch, let the wind speak first. She looked up, and that was when I saw it. Not the guilt, not the shame, but the thing underneath it. Exhaustion. The kind that no amount of sleep touches. The kind built not from action, but denial. "I'm not here to take anything," she said quickly. "I know," I replied. "I'm not here to explain." "Good," she swallowed. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness." "Then what are you here for?" She hesitated. "To see if you're as okay as people say." I let that sit between us. The wind pulled at the hem of her coat. "What do they say?" I asked. "That you're running some sort of home. That it's not just for you. That it's good." I said nothing. She looked down at her feet. "I didn't think you'd do it. Sell the house. Not like that. You told me to get out." She flinched. "I didn't mean—" "You did," I said, calm. "And then I did." The quiet that followed wasn't cruel. It was honest. Samantha stepped forward slightly, just to the edge of the sidewalk. "I don't expect to be let in." "You won't be." She nodded. Didn't look hurt, just confirmed. "I thought if I ever ended up alone, it would be you who helped." "It was," I said. She looked confused. "You being alone now?" I continued. "That's what help looks like sometimes. That's what consequence feels like." She nodded slowly, as if finally understanding something she'd pretended not to know. I looked past her to the street. "Where's Caleb?" "With my sister. He's fine." I felt something tight in my chest at his name, but I didn't ask for him. That was her job now. "Do you need money?" I asked. "No," she said. "Just wanted you to see me. As I am." "I see you." "And?" I paused, then gave her the only answer I could. "I wish you peace, but I no longer wish you near." She closed her eyes, just for a second, and when she opened them, they were wet, but she didn't cry. "Tell him I'm sorry," she said. "You tell him." She nodded again, turned slowly, and walked away, the duffel bumping against her leg, the coffee untouched. I didn't watch long, just long enough to be sure she wasn't coming back. Then I stepped inside, closed the door, and stood in the warmth of the kitchen where Myrna was humming to herself and James was boiling noodles again, even though it was too early for dinner. Alice looked up from the crossword at the table. "Visitor?" "Not anymore," I said. And that was it. We didn't need to talk about it, because in this house being seen didn't require explanation. That night, I sat at the window and wrote just one sentence. The past came knocking, but I'd already moved out. Then I folded the page, slipped it into the drawer, and turned out the light. Christmas came quietly that year. No tree, just a rosemary bush Clara trimmed into the shape of a triangle. No tinsel, just old ribbons tied around doorknobs. No lights on the porch. We liked the dark just fine. Liked how it made the house glow from the inside, like a lantern someone had carried a long way just to keep it burning. We didn't exchange gifts. We exchanged time. Myrna baked bread and told stories about a man she once loved who played saxophone and smelled like sawdust. Alice read poetry by candlelight, her voice hushed but sure. James made stew so thick the spoon stood upright in the pot. Clara knit small scarves for all of us, different colours, uneven lengths, perfect in the way only imperfect things can be. And me? I just sat with them, listened, watched, existed. One morning between Christmas and New Year's, I found a letter on my pillow. No envelope. Just folded once, like it had been held too tightly in a warm hand. It was from Jason. "Mom, I don't know where to start, so I'll just say I'm sorry. Not for losing the house, not for the money, for the moments, for the looks, for the silence. I thought keeping peace meant keeping quiet, but it just meant I let things rot without anyone noticing. You were right to leave, and maybe I was never meant to stay. Caleb misses you. He carries around that old photo from the fridge, the one with you in the apron and him on your hip. He says you smiled better than anyone. He's not wrong. If you ever want to see him again, I'll never stand in the way. You don't owe me that. But you do owe him something. He didn't hurt you. I understand if I don't hear back. I love you. Jason. I held the letter for a long time. Not because it undid anything, but because it didn't try to. It didn't ask to be forgiven. Just read. I folded it gently, placed it beside the one from Samantha. I wouldn't forget, but I also wouldn't carry it. That evening, I stepped into Caleb's old room, the one James now used for his sewing, and pulled a small box from the closet. Inside, the photo Jason mentioned. Me, younger, apron-stained, Caleb in my arms, drooling and wide-eyed. I ran my thumb over the image. Then I placed it in a new frame and set it on the hallway shelf near the front door. For when he comes, not if. He didn't ask to be part of the war between silence and memory. He was just born into it. And I would never make him pay for what wasn't his to begin with. I told no one about the letter. Not Alice, not Clara, not even James. Because not every grief needs to be aired. Some just need a safe place to rest. Like us. On New Year's Eve, we ate soup by candlelight and listened to Myrna's jazz records. No countdown, no noise, just soft conversation and the smell of garlic and thyme. At midnight, we didn't cheer. We just raised our mugs, and I whispered into mine. To the ones who stayed after we stopped asking them to. Then I drank, slow and full. And outside, beneath cold earth, the tulips waited. Silent, certain, alive. Spring arrived like an apology you never expected to hear. Slow, tentative, full of small beauty that didn't ask to be noticed. The tulips bloomed early, red and gold and stubborn. We watched them from the porch with coffee in hand and blankets across our knees. They came up crooked, Alice said. They came up, I replied. Clara smiled without looking up from her knitting. I like crooked things. They don't pretend. That morning was warm enough to open the windows. Myrna played the same jazz record twice in a row, and James made lemon cake just because the lemons were soft. Nothing dramatic happened. No grand revelations. Just life. Which, after a certain age, is the most extraordinary thing of all. Later that week, the doorbell rang. I answered it, tea towel still in hand. It was Caleb, alone. His hair was longer than I remembered, his shoes untied. He held the photo frame with both hands, the one from the hallway, the one Jason said he carried around like armor. He looked up at me with eyes that hadn't hardened yet. Hi, Grandma. My throat caught, but my hands didn't shake. Hi, sweetheart. He shifted his feet. Dad said maybe I could come visit, just to see the garden. You don't have to let me in or anything. I opened the screen door wide. Of course I do. He stepped inside like a guest, though he wasn't. He belonged. That's the difference children know before adults teach them otherwise. I led him out back. The tulips nodded in the breeze. He crouched beside one, fingers brushing the petals like pages in a book. These are yours? He asked. They're ours now, I said. He sat cross-legged in the dirt and talked. About school, about the kids who tease, about how his mom moved back to her sisters and his dad works nights and leaves sticky notes that say, "Be good," and pizzas in the fridge. And you? He asked, tilting his head like only a child can. Are you still mad? I looked at him, really looked. No, I said. Just finished. He nodded, like he understood, and then he stood, wiped his hands on his jeans, and said the softest thing I'd heard in years. I missed you, Grandma. I reached for his hand. I missed me too. We sat there a while, the garden full of wind and waiting, the house breathing behind us, the world unchanged and somehow better. Eventually, Jason came to pick him up. He didn't come to the door, just waited in the car, engine running. Caleb waved through the window. I waved back. No drama, no performance, just a boy going home, and a woman already there. That night, I wrote one final letter. Not to myself. To whoever might open the drawer after I'm gone. This was a house before we made it a home. The difference isn't wood or walls. It's how you're seen inside them. This place was built by people who were told they were too much, or not enough, or simply not wanted. We didn't agree. We made soup. We made gardens. We made silence into something soft. If you're reading this, maybe you've been called a burden too. Maybe you've been told you eat but don't help. Maybe you've forgotten your own name in someone else's house. Here, you get it back. No one here proves their worth to stay. You are enough, and if you've forgotten, we'll remember for you. Love, Ruth Evelyn Thomas, founder, keeper, guest, mother, woman, whole. I folded the letter, slid it into the drawer, then made myself tea, mint, always mint, and stepped onto the porch as dusk folded the world into lavender and hush. The tulips swayed like they were listening, and so was I, to everything I once kept quiet, to everything that came after, to the softest kind of justice, peace.